Great, lifting and moving patients. So you may be asking yourself, why did we jump from chapter 5 to chapter 18? Well, think about it. A lot of the skills that we're going to be doing will involve lifting and moving each other in different capacities during the course. And we want to make sure that you do it safely, effectively, and know the right way to do it. So we consider this in the preparatory phase of the course. Under your workforce safety, it's going to be that last one, lifting and moving patients. So you've seen the slide before, and that's why we include it here. In fact, Jones and Bartlett is going to move it back into the early chapters in their next edition. So as an EMR, you have to quickly analyze that emergency situation, think about the patient's condition, and carry out effective life-saving procedures that may include lifting, moving, or positioning your patient. So some general principles with this. Every time, each and every time you move a patient, keep these guidelines in mind. Do no further harm to the patient. That's number one. If you're going to cause harm, then wait. Don't move them. Move only when necessary and as little as possible. Try to keep the patient's body as a unit, hopefully longitudinally, which means if you have to drag them, you drag them from the head, not from the side. And proper lifting techniques for yourself. And only one rescuer, and this rescuer is usually at the head, gives the commands. So when we look at these, we want to make sure that we delay, if necessary, until additional EMS personnel arrive. So we have a growing problem, and pun intended, that we have a very obese population, and it's getting larger, and again, pun intended. But if somebody looks like they're too heavy, wait till you get extra help. Don't hurt yourself for that. Don't step over the patient. You'll see people do that, and boy, it's one of my pet peeves. You know, there's a chance you're going to step on them, drop something on them, or fall on them. So don't step over the patient. Keep these rules of good body mechanics in mind. Know your own physical limitations. If normally you can lift 100 pounds and somebody weighs 200, just know that's not going to happen. Make sure you have firm footing, bending your legs, not your back. All of us will kind of nudge a little bit. Oh, this patient's heavy, so we start to lift with our legs. That gets hard, so we start to use our backs. Well, it's not that one-time lift that's going to injure you. It's that repetitive motion. Keep your arms as close to the body, not only for strength and balance, but to protect your back. Unresponsive patients who have not had any trauma, we're going to put them in their side, what we call lateral recumbent, or their recovery position. And this is so if they do vomit or have fluids from their mouth, it just drains right out. If they're laying flat on their back in that supine position, is going to affect their airway. Proper lifting and moving can result in injury to you and the patient, so using good body mechanics, like the legs, your large muscles in your legs, somewhat of your arms, but keeping that weight close to you is going to help. Keep your back straight as you lift. If you twist, boy, that's like the worst thing you can do, is have weight on your upper body and then twist. Boy, that just really hurts that lumbar area. Communicate with the other members of that lifting team. If we say 1, 2, 3, means we're moving that patient on 3. If you need to say, let's move him on 3, 1, 2, 3, everybody understands that. You can move a patient immediately if there's a dangerous situation. So danger of fire, explosion, structural collapse. If you went into that scene, which I hope you don't because it's not safe, but you find yourself in that scene and you're going to leave, grab somebody and take them with you. But try not to enter those scenes. Try not to, that's a funny thing to say. Don't enter those scenes if it's not safe for you to do so. So here's your test question. If you see a vehicle on fire at risk of exploding, how do you remove that victim? And the answer is you don't, because if a vehicle's on fire at risk of exploding, you should not be in that scene. We have urgent moves where somebody has a life-threatening problem and we need to get them out, maybe extricated from a vehicle very quickly. That's okay, but if the scene's not safe, you don't enter. We are going to talk about some single-person body moves, which if you use good body mechanics and some little things that may help you lessen the friction between the patient and whatever you're dragging them on, you can move most people. Now, we don't have a skills time plan for this, and this may be something that we do after the class as a CE class, and bring everybody back in once you get your certification and really spend some time with this, because you're going to easily spend 3-4 hours on lifting and moving. So it kind of depends on the folks at your agency, how much they want to see you do in this class, or if we want to wait and do CE. But closed drag is the easiest one to move, easiest way to move a patient. You just grab their clothes, their shirt at the collar, and support the head and drag them. If they're on carpet or asphalt, that creates a lot more friction. So if you can find something to slide them on, it makes it a lot easier. Cardiac arrest in the closed drag mode, remove them from a tight place so you can work on them. Look at your surroundings and go, wow, a whole lot more people can fit if I can pull her out of the stall here. So that's a nice move. If you can get them on a blanket, especially if they have a linoleum or tile floor, boy, this is nice, because, you know, it's like when you were kids dragging each other around the kitchen, you know, shining the floor. If you don't have a blanket, a rug will work. Again, you always want to move them from the head in, not the feet. You can do an arm-to-arm drag, and this is real efficient too. You wrap your arms under their armpits, but you grab the same arm on the same side at the wrist. Their arms will not bend, keeping their body close to yours, and you can literally move that patient wherever you need them to go. This is a really great technique. The firefighter's drag, you'll tie the hands together, loop the hands over your neck, and then you'll just basically crawl and drag that patient with you. I've never done this one, so I don't know how efficient it is. My luck, somebody'd have really long arms and not be very efficient. A drag from the vehicle, so if they're sitting in the arms, you can grab up under the arms and cradle the patient's head between your arms, and then you pull them down to a horizontal position as you remove them from the vehicle in order to pull them out. And that's kind of a picture of what that describes. With 2 or more rescuers, you can have one supporting the head while the other one moves the patient by lifting under the arms. And this is good too. You can move them onto that long backboard. Carries for non-ambulatory patients, so they don't have any fractures. They don't have anything wrong with their arms or legs, but they can't walk. So this is a 2-person extremity carry. The one at the head has that arm grabbing the forearms like it showed you in the previous picture, and then the other one grabbed the legs like this. And you can get through tight spaces, you know, mobile homes with the narrow hallways. This works really well. The 2-person seat carry, I like this. We'll show you another way to do it where you get a little more torque with your arms. But you link your arms around. This is good. It's not great. There's another one that I like that kind of makes a 4-post where your arms are actually resting on the other person's arms, so it gives you a little bit more not only support but protection from your arms collapsing. And then the person that you're carrying would wrap their arms around you. So this is good. Again, for nobody with fractures or anything, just non-ambulatory. Cradle arms carry for a child or somebody that's really small that you can cradle carry like this. Chair carries are nice, so you can improvise by using their own chair, as long as it's got something that you can carry from the back and something you can carry from the front. Most people feel pretty secure in a chair rather than being carried by your arms, and you know, again, the one in the front, one in the back, you can get down narrow places like this. Most ambulances carry a stair chair, which works really well, whether it be on stairs or through narrow hallways. Kind of the same idea behind it. Your pack strap carry, and we have done this in training before, and I got to tell you, if you're the victim on the back, it's not very comfortable at all. It hurts your arms a lot. So this would have to be almost like an emergency move. You didn't have anything else that you could use to pack them out of there. A direct ground lift, and this is where you're going to really use some muscles. It's probably one of the hardest moves to do. And let me see if there's a picture in here. So somebody who's laying on the ground and you need to get them from the ground to the stretcher, one of the easiest things to do is use a backboard to move them with, or a sheet or a blanket that you know won't tear, so multiple people can get around that patient and lift them up and put them on that stretcher. Transferring a patient from the bed to the stretcher, so maybe they're in bed at their house. A lot of times we'll just take their linen, their sheets off of their bed, roll it up, make them into a little taco, and then use those sheets to move them over onto your stretcher. And then same thing when you're moving from the stretcher back to a bed, maybe into the hospital bed or whatever. Just remind them that these sheets belong to them. So it just shows kind of using the rolled up sheet underneath them to move them over. That works really well. One person walking assist for somebody who's ambulatory but weak. So they just need somebody to lean on. Again, if you're about the same height, that works pretty good. If you're not, have somebody really tall or really short, then that can make it a little more difficult. The two-person walk-in assist is good, especially if they can't bear much weight at all. Your wheeled ambulance stretchers, these are also called cots or litters, and they've come a long way. Furno is a good brand that's been out there for a while. A lot of places have gone to Stryker because of the power capabilities, and there's others that have power capabilities too. And your power cots will add about 75 pounds of weight to your stretcher. Just kind of be aware of it. There's some pros and cons to it. Most of them have the 3 belts going around and the 2 arm rails coming up. Some will have the shoulder straps also that tie into that top belt that keeps them from coming off the front. And they're usually rolled by 2 to 4 people. Notice it doesn't say 3. You always want to have an even number. If you have 4, then everybody grabs a corner. If you have 2, then everybody grabs an end. The wheels are quite large, but they can still catch on things. That's why we always move end to end direction, not sideways. And people that are sitting on these stretchers prefer to go feet first where they can see what's coming at them rather than what went past. Your portable stretchers like this are good. Some of them have wheels at one end, which can work. You just pick up one end and kind of wheel them around. Make sure that their feet are at the end with the wheels so their head's higher. They can be carried and then placed onto a stretcher. And the stair chair, boy, this is an old one. This is probably a first generation stair chair. There's some that are really quite nice now. They actually have little gripping devices that will grab those stairs, especially as you're coming down. Still good, still good. That bottom strap you see there at the very bottom of the frame, make sure you undo that before they stand up. From experience, boy, that's a fall, and that's something you're really apologizing for. I think one of the biggest things to tell people when you're using a stair chair is to give themselves a bear hug and don't reach out for things, because they're trying to grab so you don't drop them, and they end up getting hurt and they end up hurting you. Backboards are used to mobilize people who may have had a neck or back injury. They're also good at lifting people who maybe have some trauma or whatever to the stretcher. So these are long backboards and pretty much commercialized now. We used to make our own out of wood and everything. Made out of tough fiberglass or plastic, they can crack, so be aware of that. Patient has to be secure with straps before you pick them up. You don't want them rolling off of that. We also have short vest-style devices like this Kendrick extrication device, a KED, and it's good for people that are found in a sitting position. There's little inserts of plywood in there, so there's no metal. They can be x-rayed through and you know, are pretty convenient to use. Scoop stretchers are good if you want to pick somebody up that you can't log roll onto the board or long roll onto a sheet. Somebody maybe with a hip fracture or something like that, so you scoop them and then you pick them up, and whether you're putting them directly on the stretcher or on the board, then you can split those two on either side. They clip, I don't know if I can make this where you can see it, but they clip here and here, so when you break them apart, they're 2 halves. And nobody's meant to stay on this thing. It's just a moving device. In an emergency, you have a multi-casualty incident, more patients than what you have supplies for. You can use sturdy planks, doors, ironing boards, folding tables, you know, anything to move. I like the surfboard, snowboard, so kind of either end of the spectrum to move patients on. I will tell you this, most services are getting away from rigid boards. An elderly person, after laying on a board for 45 minutes, can have a stage 1 decubitus ulcer on their coccyx or their heels. And it's not very comfortable at all. So a lot of services are having the spinal clearance protocols where it's an inclusion and exclusion, meaning that, are you awake? Check. Do you complain of pain to your neck or back? No. Inclusion, exclusion, and then that you do not have to C-spine immobilize them. Collars are good. I mean, they should be secured with a cervical collar, but not necessarily on a backboard. So the whole idea of immobilizing or spinal management is just in case they have that neck or back injury. So collars are used. These are kind of a first-generation collar. There's a lot of good ones out there now. Soft cervical collars are not good. We call those plaintiff collars. Not much use in the field. You want a rigid collar. And so the person at the head holds cervical spinal mobilization in a neutral inline position while the other one puts the collar on, just reminding people not to move. If they want to come out of that collar, they can. Patients that need to be transported on a backboard if they have sustained spinal trauma or a gunshot wound, especially to the trunk, where that bullet could have gone through the cervical spine itself. The spinal cord itself, anywhere along that chest, in the back of the chest. So here's some reasons that you would suspect a patient has a spinal injury, and you want to make sure that you move that patient as a unit. We'll practice this with our spinal immobilization and trauma, so we'll get more into that then. But on my count, we're going to roll the patient to the left. 1, 2, 3. Everybody moves them in unison. Slide the board up behind them, and then roll them back over, giving that command again. 1, 2, 3 to move them. Assisting with a short device, we're going to practice this also, so you'll see that in the trauma module. Log rolling is a very common way to move a patient. Don't do it if they have any injury on that side that you're rolling them to. So if they have like bilateral on both sides, the thigh bone, the femur fractures, then you can't log roll them because you're going to roll them on an injured side. If they have a hip injury, you're going to roll them on that injured side. So that would be a time that you would scoop them. Typically, it takes 4 people to do a log roll, and the person at the head is the one in charge. All patient movement commands have 2 parts, a question and then the order for movement. So when we think about that, it's like, are y'all ready? On my count. We make sure communication is good. This is a straddle lift, and we do this. As silly as it looks, you're like, man, I don't want to be the guy at the end, but somebody's got to do it. This does come in really handy. You can barely lift up the patient, somebody else slides the board up under. Usually takes 5 people to do it. Doesn't show the 5th person in that picture, but that's how the board got there. That person slid him up. The straddle slide, again, now they're moving the victim onto the board rather than moving the board underneath them. And this is, really small, narrow space. This is where it's going to be convenient to use. Every patient that's on a backboard or a stretcher, we're going to belt them in. We don't want to make them so tight that they can't breathe, but we also want to think about, if this person falls, is this going to keep them secured? So this shows a nice mobilization. The head and especially the arms and chest, everything immobilized there. We'll show you some other techniques to use when going up and down stairs and such. If you don't have the spinal blocks, blanket roll can work well to keep somebody fairly immobilized and stabilized. Head immobilization must be maintained throughout the entire process. So whoever's at the head doesn't, have something better to do. If you hold C-spine, that's your only job, is taking care of that airway and keeping that head in a neutral position. Here's some commercial blocks. We loved these, but you take a patient in the hospital and then you're waiting for your equipment. These get lost, so a lot of places have gone to the disposable head blocks, one-time use, and then that's it. You don't have to worry about recouping them. This lasted a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but it, just kind of one fell swoop, and we do a lot of this stuff in trauma. So summary, some things to think about when moving your patients, not only for your protection, but also for your patients. If somebody's unresponsive, positioning is important. We want to make sure if they don't have any trauma that we place them in the recovery position, just so in the event that if they did vomit, their airway would be more protected. Types of devices that, like I said, it'll kind of be up to your agencies if we do this in class or we come back and do a really thorough CE class on this. And I'm kind of leaning towards that myself. We'll talk with Lawrence and see what he thinks about that. But we'll practice some of these in the class itself, just maybe not to the extent that you would need. So as an EMR, you may injure your back, even if it's straight, if you lift with your back bent forward at the hips. Okay, well, that's lifting with your back. Align your shoulders over your hips. Hold your hands close to your legs. That's a good thing. Use your leg muscles. So that back bent forward at the hips is a no-no because you want to keep your back straight. Patients who should be transported on backboard, including a patient who is intoxicated, requests it. Oh, nobody's going to request it, I'll tell you that. Has an upper extremity injury, has a gunshot wound to the trunk, and that's going to be your answer there. That bullet could have gone through the thoracic spinal column and injured the spinal cord there. Head immobilization is not required in all patients who are placed on a backboard. Well, if you're on a backboard, you might as well be, but maybe not. Sometimes we use the board to do quality compressions, giving us that firm surface behind them. Can be achieved using head blocks or towel rolls. Does not need to be maintained during backboarding process. No, it has to be maintained. Can be properly accomplished with only special equipment. Now you hang on to it yourself. So when we look at that answer, we can use commercial head blocks, or we can use something makeshift in there. So that's a review.